So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrew Carney. I'm a program manager at ARPA-H, and I have fellow ARPA-H folks next to me here on the panel, and we're here to talk about healthcare. Maybe we could just go down the line with quick intros, and then we'll get into the fun stuff.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. So Jason Roos, I'm the acting director of ARPA-H, scientist by training, and have been working in the government space for almost 20 years now, focused on health technology, research and development, as well as deployment and production.
Hi, Jim Roberts, Director of the Resilience Systems Office at ARPA-H. So we're the office that houses the cybersecurity portfolio.
Hi, my name is Kilianski. I'm a program manager at ARPA-H and the acting deputy director of the Health Science Futures Mission Office. Microbiologist, immunologist by training. Had a lot of fun going around to all the exhibits today.
This will be fun. Ross York, Program Manager in the Health Science Futures Mission Office. Background as a maxillofacial surgeon, running 2 programs in Health Science Futures, one of which is Nitro, and the other, which we'll talk about, is called Poseidon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So as we've seen today with AIxCC and the announcement on the winners earlier today, ARPA-H has a significant role to play in advancing sort of AI to protect healthcare systems, but that role extends far beyond just protecting the systems. It includes creating new cures, improving patient privacy, really changing the game on how we become healthier, live longer, et cetera. So my first question is for Jason. So why is it important that ARPA-H continues to invest in the AI space?
Yeah, it's a great one. And congratulations, by the way, for a great outcome and presentation today. So those of you that may not be familiar with ARPA-H, we are, you can almost think of us as the DARPA for health. So we were born in the image of DARPA and that same model of really going after those high-risk, high-impact problems, in our case, in the healthcare space. And that really spans everything from cybersecurity to the molecular problems all the way up to the societal problems. So we really have a large bandwidth with which we can operate really across the entire healthcare sector. And our investments are really placed where traditional R&D isn't going to go, where the commercial industry isn't going to go, whether it's because the ROI incentives are not aligned or because there in some cases may not even be a market. In terms of how we do our investments, you're going to hear a little bit today from our program managers, but they are the heart of our agency. They're come in super motivated to solve some of these biggest problems and have tremendous amount of experience and expertise in their given areas, and really go out there to try to push the boundaries of what can be done, and in our case, in the healthcare space. In terms of your question, of why should we continue to invest in this in AI and certainly beyond even the cybersecurity world, first of all, it's all around us as we see in our everyday lives. AI is going to impact everything that we do, and you'll hear a little bit of that from Jen and the program managers. But there's really 3 other areas that I see where AI is going to have a tremendous impact, really for all of us moving forward. The first is, it's no secret that there is a lack of healthcare providers that exist, and particularly in the specialty care, sometimes even in our urban areas, but certainly in our rural parts of our country and frontier parts of our country. That coupled with the fact that the healthcare providers, are burnt out, overworked, et cetera. There's just not enough of them, and so there are a lot of tools and opportunities in the AI space to help address that problem. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. The second area is in terms of drug development and speeding up the process of how we develop drugs, how we test drugs, and doing it in a way that's marrying up the best of what you can get out of AI to truly have a better understanding of what experiments may necessarily be done, how to, as Andy's going to talk a little bit, I presume, about how to do testing without doing humans. And then the last place is, as we try to understand and as the data is exploding about biology and every aspect of omics, how do we take that massive amounts of data, those biomarkers, and really try to understand the causal relationship between one's biomarker profile and disease in the future. These are big data challenges, but certainly accessible and on the horizon with where AI is today. Key thing for us, though, in any of these areas is that what our investments are looking to do is not replicate what's already happening out there, but really take advantage of what is already going on out there, bring it together in these unique teams, and really try to push the boundaries, much like you have done with AICC.
That's I think thank you for that. And I think just in talking about patient care becoming almost a big data problem on a per patient basis, like the idea that as we can measure more, as we can explore the individual kind of personalized healthcare, and we create reams and reams of more data, this becomes a patient privacy and access problem from a data infrastructure perspective. And I'm wondering, Jen, maybe if you can dig a little more into how we're sort of bridging that gap.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think on the data side, there's a lot of interoperability challenges across different healthcare systems where clearly we want to be able to have integrated information about people's health record and health history in order to make informed decisions about care and diagnosis. And yet, because of the fragmented way in which our healthcare system has stood up, it's very challenging to do this. There's a extremely large push right now to try and make it so that health record systems are not only more interoperable, but we're able to make it so that folks can access records on their phone and have much more control over how the records are shared. This means that we're anticipating more of more emerging technology that is both connecting records and providing accessibility to patients, and therefore more of an attack surface. So the question then becomes as well, how do we think about making it so that we have really secure data transfer protocols as folks are moving things to apps that may or may not need to be HIPAA compliant? How are we thinking about security in order to make it so that patient data really is protected in the way that it should be?
So, I mean, that problem space is not just one that we can solve kind of in the digital space, right? That takes into account, patient preference, technology platforms that are being used, how they're being used. So it's definitely that whatever opportunities exist for AI in that space, it's definitely a sort of interdisciplinary, multi-spectrum sort of problem. And so speaking of, that was the segue. Speaking of sort of hybrid work, so Andy, you do a lot of kind of hybrid AI work, or you're doing that currently. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really fascinating to hear this morning in the Challenge Award winner presentations, their ability to use these frontier models in ways that were really cost efficient, and maybe have access to tools and some agentic properties, right, that we can learn more about when we're thinking about biomedical research and development. So my portfolio, we have two programs, one that's called APEX and one that's called Catalyst. In both of those programs, we're focused on in silico computational tool development. And I think the end goal that we see when we think about developing software tools to better predict human outcomes from research and development is thinking about putting those together, right, and allowing some of these frontier models to access those capabilities and really accelerate the pace of research and development. Not only from a pace and maybe a cost perspective, but from an accuracy perspective. So most of the therapies and drugs that we all take had a 1 in 10 chance of getting all the way through from preclinical research and development to a licensed drug that then we can take. And when you look at the biopharmaceutical research expenditures, they way outpace by percentage of revenue all other industries in this country. And so I think we really have a lot of efficiency challenges that we can solve when we think about putting these in silico approaches in the hands of large language models and really building that autonomous co-scientist of the future.
So do you see, in that process that whittles it down to sort of 10%, the final 10%, are there opportunities to improve the human kind of centric processes there to either increase availability or identify more specific applications of drugs?
So, thinking about what would the next AI cyber challenge be, and maybe in what topic area. Most of my career has been at the intersection of security and health. And so when we think about our public health infrastructure, our sort of healthcare delivery ecosystem, it's really fragile. And that was pointed out in today's meeting. This is a no-fail industry where any downtime, any compromising, right, ends up costing patients' lives. And so I think we have an enormous opportunity to think about the tools that we're developing from a research and development perspective, how those end up being deployed in industry, and then how they're used to make biopharmaceuticals. The whole Internet of Things, IoT of things within a biomanufacturing facility. It's really complex. It's like a one-of-one type of application depending on what company you go to. And so I think there are, as Jen mentioned, a pretty large attack surface there that we should be mindful of, and maybe that's a future proof of concept experiment for us.
Yeah, thinking about the challenges with securing kind of the manufacturing or industry side, and the large data kind of potential explosion as we're looking at different facets of individual patients and populations. I think Ross, I don't want to describe Poseidon for you, but I think this is at the intersection of all of these problems. We have, I think, really interesting opportunities like Poseidon. So can you tell us a little bit about Poseidon?
Sure. So the beautiful part of how we manage programs is that we tackle every single side of healthcare with very different lenses too. So as a surgeon, I can cut out a collection of fungating tumors, but I don't think that's the standard of care. And as people are probably aware, cancer screening can save lives, but right now it currently depends on a technology that I believe should be obsolete and is really dependent on the tumor that's so big that that's what generates the signal. So Poseidon is born out of that basis, where instead we think that it should be at a patient's discretion to screen themselves for cancer. So instead you should be able to walk into your hair salon, your library, your pharmacy, wherever you might believe is a credible place to pick up a test and test yourself at home at your own interval. The foundation, though, from a scientific level is synthetic biology. So instead of saying, hey, we want your tumor, provided you have one that is big enough, we want your tumor to be large enough to then release a signal, that's not what this is based on. Instead, this is based more in the DEF CON hacker sense as a computer system that's logic gated. So we can mine many, many, many reams of data, to the data point earlier, with the help of AI and expedite this process to create sensors. Those sensors have logic gating, so only in the process of binding in certain tumors will they then release a reporter. That reporter is essentially a zip code for that cancer, so it will be binary, cancer yes, cancer no. In order to do that, it means that a patient can then put something into their body that traffics or systemically circulates. In the presence of cancer, releases a reporter in your urine or breath, so it's non-invasive or minimally invasive, and then can connect remotely through an EHR platform on your phone at your discretion and at a clinician's discretion to then have that screening report. Now, screening, not diagnosis. So it puts you into the pipeline to screen at your discretion. And as anyone might have seen in the news recently, retrospective analysis of colorectal cancer screening in younger patients has been incredibly beneficial to catching and curing cancers when they're actually curable at stage 1. So the program is built on that.
Yeah, it's the massive extension of sort of hospital at home, like the idea that you get all this autonomy, all this potential. Do you see sort of the when you imagine like Poseidon test kits, are they more kind of bio-based reagents, or are there lab on a chip kind of, is that the direction you see it going?
It's actually kind of all the above and more. So it's dependent on teams. And in the ARPA structure, we ask teams to come to the table. We set the challenge. Obviously, you know this all too well, but for the public, we set a challenge that's incredibly lofty, that moonshot phrase that people might balk at. But we set something where as long as the parameters are met and it's performance-based, then the teams can come to us and say, you know what, to make this urine test, we're going to use this aptamer sensor potentially. We're going to use this other modality, or maybe use a bioink. It's completely dependent on them, but what they do have to demonstrate to us is high credibility. So we're looking for something where a patient knows at home and a doctor knows wherever they take that test, especially in a healthcare desert, many of which exist in middle and rural America, that if they're taking that test and if they have a positive or negative result, they can rest assured that that's not a false positive or a false negative. But beyond that, we allow them to really explore the realm of synthetic biology at their discretion.
I think so I think to Ross's point about performance-based, where we set the metrics, but we're not prescriptive about the methods, this opens the door for, I think, really interesting kind of solutions and what we refer to as non-traditional performers. So folks that might not necessarily consider themselves, they're not academic researchers, they're not part of a large pharmaceutical company, but they have an idea, they have knowledge, experience, capability, and they think they have a shot at addressing this problem and hitting those metrics. So that's really exciting for us because it's sort of a surprise to see what works for us too. Like we get to pose the question and then get to help kind of study the answer alongside the researchers themselves. But I wonder maybe if we can go down the line and talk about some like either non-traditional organizations or interesting solutions that you guys have. We've all been in the ARPA sphere for a long time, and so maybe just kind of giving some examples of either approaches or teams that you've seen, I think it'd be interesting. So.
Sure. So I guess I'm going to talk about a couple examples in the healthcare space. So one is around antimicrobial resistance. So this is an area, it's the second leading cause of death. You don't hear about it very much because we have absolutely no way to diagnose it in a clinically relevant time frame. So this is when somebody gets some type of infection and the antibiotic stops working, which is a big deal. And there's a risk that bacteria are becoming more and more resistant to antibiotics, which would really break lots of different parts of healthcare. So we pose the question, how do you diagnose this? Because right now, what you have to do is take a blood sample, send it to a lab, and days or weeks later, you get a result back, which doesn't help somebody who's having a life-threatening infection because they need to be treated with a broad-spectrum antibiotic right away, which perpetuates the problem. So we posed this question. A team came to us, and they created a device that made it so that they have these channels that can hold about 5 cells total, and they can use hyperspectral imaging to tell you what bacteria is in each of those channels and screen 10 million bacteria at once. What is currently happening is they're converting that into a device at a hospital that would make it possible to screen to detect what type of bacterial infection somebody has, and more importantly, what's the right antibiotic for that patient within minutes. Somewhere between 2 and 30 minutes is what we're seeing in the preliminary tests. So that takes the second leading cause of death worldwide from something that we don't even really talk about that extensively because we don't have a way to diagnose it, into something where we have a chance to diagnose, not just diagnose it close to the bedside, but actually pick what the right antibiotic is for that patient. Completely game-changing.
Yeah, so we have a performer who's working on de novo design of antibodies. And so our immune system is really fascinating. Our immune system has the capacity to make 10 to the 20th unique antibodies that are important for fighting infections, fighting cancers, et cetera. That number, though, is close to infinity, I think, when it comes to thinking about biological data sets. And so we've never yet been able to fully understand what those 10 to the 20th combinations might be. And thus, we haven't been able to fully harness our immune system to do things like fight cancer, fight infections. We've got a performer who's using AI hybrid methodologies to simulate what each of those 10 to the 20th combinations might be, represent those computationally, and then use those to fish for targets that might be effective for those antibodies that our body has the capacity to make, that then we can manufacture and apply as a therapy. So, we think about a relatively finite amount of genetic information in our body, and we're learning more and more every day that it is almost infinite in what our immune system especially is able to produce and combat. And so what we want to be able to do is to harness that power, understand it, and then leverage it for things like next-generation therapeutics, personalized cancer therapy. And so just when I think of that 10 to the 20th number, it blows my mind. And as an immunologist, I still don't understand how all of it works. But it's a really fascinating problem set that we're going after with some really brilliant, I think, non-traditional performers, because we have some academic medical center participants, we have some industry partners who are there, and then we work with the national laboratories, Department of Energy, on some of these because they have some of the fastest supercomputers in the world. And so we're really putting all of government, all of industry and academia approach to some of these problems. And that results in results that come in really quickly and that are really fascinating.
mean, there are two ways I would like to answer this. One is just the staggering convening power of an ARPA-H. So we have these things called proposers days. When you put out what we call an ISO, but it's basically a request for proposals, we host these events that allow teams to gather, understand the vision, and then team with one another. The barometer for all of us and kind of the puckering moment for us is wondering whether anyone's going to show up. So when we put out my first program and the agency's first program, Nitro, to regenerate all tissues, eradicate osteoarthritis, and do it on a once per year injectable or never need a knee replacement again, I think I was a bit nervous the night before, like I'm going to be in an empty ballroom. But everyone shows up and they start to dream alongside you. And now we have teams that are in March of next year entering the next phase of that program. And you'll start to hear about these teams that are actually regenerating tissue. So it's a pretty great demonstration. That's academia, small business, large business, the FDA. Everyone kind of collaborates along the same vision as the program managers and the agency creates. The other side of that is I was able to exit an SBIR contract back out to industry. And I proposed, hey, there's this intradermal drug market that doesn't really exist, but the basic premise is if you have lupus, let's say, or any chronic disease, you have to go in for frequent infusions. Why isn't that just available at home? And so we put out a fairly lean request for proposals for small business contracts to say, let's create a market that doesn't exist, do it in a phase 2 SBIR, which is $3.5 million, very, very lean relative to a small business, but create a market that doesn't exist by allowing for a platform to deliver intradermal drugs. And this company called Satio up in Boston, SATIO, decided to show up and show out. And in a short period of performance, 18 months, they created a device that has industry buzzing, has the potential to unlock a brand new market, and for $3.5 million investment, that's staggering for what we can create.
I mean, can we just maybe Jason, you can comment on this. 18 months to get to a prototype on a brand new type of biologic, a brand new type of therapy is bananas. Can you talk maybe about how in general, like our model helps us accelerate sort of progress towards these outcomes, relative to other options?
Yeah, sure. And given that our mission is accelerate better health outcomes for everyone, that is really the driving focus of what we're trying to do, whether we're driving it into the market or driving it onto that next transition partner. And there's a couple of ways that we do that. So first of all, we're all term limited. So we're not here in perpetuity. So everybody is coming in immediately with a bias to action to have impact as quickly as possible. It's a 3-year term, and that can go by in a flash. And so there's already this like momentum that the moment you walk in the door. But we have a lot of tools that are part of our model that really kind of help accelerate. And so actually drawing upon some of the comments that Ross just made. So first of all, unlike DARPA, who has the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, SOCOM to transition their products to, we don't have a in-government customer per se. I mean, maybe we can hand it off to some of the advanced developers in the BARDAs, JPOs, and the like, but generally speaking, the vast majority of our products have to find their way back into the market. And so we asked the program managers from day one to start thinking about transition and commercialization and how to accelerate that. And the way we do that is we wrap the program manager and we wrap the teams with the resources that they need to be able to think through what does a transition strategy, commercialization strategy look like. We require those who, those performers to come to us with those plans that they're thinking about along the way. We provide them with entrepreneurs in residence for those, startups that may not have the resources or the reach or the network to be able to reach out to those experts to help them through the transition process. So we have a whole office dedicated to providing support both to the program managers and to the performers and moving through and ensuring that when we're done, they're able to bridge to new funding from either equity partners, or if they're far enough along, they're able to get through the FDA and into the market. So that's one aspect in how we help accelerate. The other part of it, again, Ross, you just sort of briefly mentioned this, but when you're thinking about how to survive in the wild, you also need to, there's a regulatory component, there's a reimbursable component, and so we also have the convening power and the ability to draw in our partners across the department, the FDA and CMS, to start thinking about the regulatory challenges, the reimbursement challenges, and make them part of the team, bring them along that journey so we can providing input to the team as well as expedite what might happen on the other side. Now, we're not putting our thumb on the scale or anything like that, but we're informing the science that's important to helping with that transition. And then the last thing that we do is when we stood up, we were required by Congress to be in 3 locations. So we have we exist in 3 places. One is in Washington, D.C., that's our stakeholder hub, where we're able to foster those engagements that I just discussed. But we also have a hub up in Boston that's run by VentureWell to help us connect with the venture world and the investors and help make that connection. And there's 500 spokes that are part of that consortium. But importantly, adoption is another aspect of getting products into the market. And so our customer experience hub down in Dallas is intended to be a place where we can get access to healthcare providers, patient advocacy groups, the end users of our product, to bring them in that human-centered design piece in the beginning. So you're having the end in mind, you're incorporating those aspects all the way from the get-go. So collectively, all of those things are designed to be able to help accelerate the work that we're doing and get it out there much faster than it would under normal circumstances, if at all.
Yeah, that ticking clock that we're not here for we're here for a limited duration. Like, all of us feel that every day, like trying to do the best, like do as much as we can with the time and resources we have. And it's exciting, but also stressful, I think. So this is a question for everyone. So when you think about the future of like biomedical R&D, beyond your current portfolios potentially, like what are the if we think about AI as the potential to sort of analyze extremely high dimensional data at speed and scale, like what do you think are either the places that are super exciting that we should be going, or like the places that we're definitely not going, or thing you're excited about that we are going, or places that we're not but should, is the question. Jen, do you want to start?
Yeah, so one area is in the reliability of artificial intelligence methods that are used in a clinical setting. So anybody who does AI knows that the results that we get in a lab or a controlled setting are very different than the results that you get in the real world. So what happens in healthcare is that we will test different AI diagnostics, for instance, and then get good results. And when we field them, they degrade over time, sometimes in ways that really can put patient health at risk. So we have an effort, Precise AI, in order to make it so that we can auto-detect degradation in the field. Because, of course, the way that AI methods degrade depend on the software stack that they're part of, the patient population that shows up, and all of these different factors that we can't predict ahead of time. So we need to scale that evaluation. And then once we detect the degradation, we want to go a step further and make it so that the clinical techniques can auto-correct, figure out why they're not working well in that particular hospital, and then figure out how to make it so that they can get back online and work correctly in a way that communicates with the clinician, so the clinician knows in what cases it's safe to trust that AI diagnostic and in what cases it's not. Then another area, cybersecurity. So I think we'd be remiss not to talk about the wonderful success with the AI Cyber Challenge, how it detected so far 18 vulnerabilities in the course of the competition. And then the question is, where does ARPA-H go with that? And really, if we're going back to what's our dream in this area, our dream is to make it so that ransomware attacks against hospitals become a thing of the past. An AI Cyber Challenge is just the first step. So in the healthcare sector, it takes 491 days on average to patch a vulnerability. That's one that we already know about. 491 days. That is over a year. Clearly, we want to patch things within days. 60 to 90 days is already too long, and then in healthcare is so much further. That's because of the complexity of these networks. Tons of different medical devices, a need for medical devices and infrastructure to be online 24/7, and just the magnitude of the problem far exceeding the resources that the hospitals have. So how do we build on this foundation from AI Cyber Challenge in order to make it so that we can get to a world where there are no ransomware attacks on hospitals? Because, of course, a third of our nation hospitals are at risk of closing, and a ransomware attack could be the thing that shuts their doors. So how do we move forward? I think there's two key places. So one is taking the tools that are coming out of the AI Cyber Challenge and getting them into software development pipelines. So that way we can find and fix vulnerabilities before the next generation of medical device software or electronic health software gets fielded. So we want to find and fix those vulnerabilities before software goes out so that way we are significantly and hopefully fully eliminating the attack surfaces in the new software going into hospitals. And then the second area is the legacy systems. How do we find and fix the vulnerabilities and patch them in a safe way, a verifiably safe way, in order to deal with the large amount of legacy software that's already in our hospital systems? And that's where Andrew Carney's next program, Upgrade, really fits in. How do we make it so that we have emulated environments where we can map out a hospital system, figure out how to emulate the medical devices with enough fidelity so that we can find and fix the vulnerabilities in medical devices, and also test the patches to make sure that once we deploy them, that medical equipment can stay online 24/7, so that ultimately we can drastically reduce and hopefully fully eliminate the vulnerabilities in our medical systems and make it so that ransomware attacks against hospitals become significantly harder, and then ultimately get to the point where they're a thing of the past.
So I'm also very excited about emulation, I think, but from a little bit of a different perspective. So, we are all hardware, software hybrids. And much like Andrew and the AI Cyber Challenge demonstrated, in those software environments, in those code bases, there's going to be bugs. There's going to be errors. There's going to be things that don't quite make sense, and those open up vulnerabilities, right? And from the human being perspective, right, those might be rare diseases, right? So maybe we have a fault in our software code that manifests its way in a disease that's very specific to us. When it comes to cancer and neurodegenerative diseases and other things, right, these are really complex problems where the language of how they arise we don't really understand yet, but we're getting closer and closer every day to where I think in the very near future, we're going to be able to emulate our physiology for the purposes of understanding what those bugs or errors in our code might end up leading to in our lifetime. And then we're building very precision tools in the Health Science Futures Office and other parts of the agency to go in and fix those bugs, right? To patch those vulnerabilities. And so the analogy to the cyber bug hunting, bug bounty type of a world, I think we're very close to being able to apply those types of principles to human biology. Not only from a what does the code mean and where are these vulnerabilities or bugs, but how we fix them. And we're finding that in our hardware as well. And we've got the ability to do that, much like Ross's Nitro program. So that's what I'm really excited about. I think the ARPA-H model is a fantastic way to go after some of those things, whether it's with a challenge, it's with these really accelerated research interdisciplinary teams that come together. And when you look across, I think, the portfolio of programs we've already started at the agency, you can see those connections forming already between some of the people we're already working with and those future goals. And so I think it's a really exciting area. We're very close to being able to program biology and engineer biology. And I think with the help of the community here, we might be able to get closer to them.
So it sounds like Andy's saying that the biohacking village may get a new edition very shortly. That's maybe a little messier too, but that's exciting.
So I'm the healthy skeptic to bring excitement and trepidation here. So I think that from a Nitro perspective, there should be a future and will be a future where we have total knees that have digital twins that can be optimized with AI and the data sets just get better. I think as I already showed you with Poseidon, the cancer program that's coming up, which should be announced hopefully at the end of this fiscal year, that if you have a plethora, the 2.5 petabytes in the TCGA alone that has to be mined, that plethora of data needs to be optimized. But as we continue to input more data from the Poseidon program into that we hope to optimize over time. So I think it's exciting to design better products that are using the data we're generating. Trepidation, I think, is probably intuitive to most folks. Just AI has become a buzzword that ties to shareholder value. And it doesn't always mean AI. It just means a blanket term. So I think that the three things that I think are important that are more to the call to action for this community, tied to engagement, credibility, and then reducing the buzzword appeal. So engagement, if you can remove the term AI from the title and it's no longer what a patient wants, it wasn't a good idea. We need to deliver products for people, and then so a lot of what we do and a lot of what I do in my portfolio is making sure, for instance, for Poseidon, we pulled through an IRB survey, 2,800 people in lower income communities affected by cancer to understand if they even wanted that. We should be building things for the public for you so that you can access them at your availability and discretion. Second one is credibility. So in keeping with that, we need to deliver things that you trust. Otherwise, the AI part is kind of irrelevant. And that's that third part. So I think if people start to pressure test this and red team it and constantly operationalize the design, test, build, learn cycle, we all can improve and our systems can in turn improve as well.
Yeah, I think I think definitely we all share that concern, and I think one of the exciting things about a big part of creating a program in the ARPA sphere, DARPA, ARPA-H, ARPA-I, ARPA-E, is creating the metrics for your program, creating those indicators of success, and we can get pretty creative with them because oftentimes we're trying to test things that aren't currently feasible today, but that's the evidence that helps us define the evidence of success, and that's evidence that we can share both with our colleagues and with the public at large. So this taxpayer-funded work can not only be successful, but it's not vibes, right? We actually have evidence of the efficacy or lack thereof, but we have evidence how these things work, when they don't, and so that's once again been an exciting thing for me, just involved in a myriad of ARPA-H and DARPA programs, as that we are incentivized and motivated to produce evidence, and then share that. And so we're not, I don't know, we don't have. I guess we're encouraged to be honest about our accomplishments, and sort of the judges are kind of the American people, and I don't know. I really enjoy that. I don't know if that makes me weird. I think we all do to varying extents. But I don't know, Jason, do you have any maybe closing thoughts or?
Yeah, just sort of building off of the conversation from today. I mean, we're a baby agency. We're only 3 years old, so there's a lot more. I mean, we're still very much in startup mode and growth mode, and I'm so excited about what the future holds for us. And I look at AIxCC as just an exemplar of really why we exist. Underfunded, cyber in the healthcare community, just underfunded. So it's that white space for us. We put in place this giant reach, and we always say 50% of the people in the room sort of roll their eyes like, you're never going to get there. Then we're kind of in the sweet spot. And to really push, and get the outcomes that we got out of it truly represent why we exist and how what we're doing every day truly has the potential to accelerate better health outcomes for everybody, to bring healthcare to everybody that needs it, and really sort of level off the playing field right now. So it doesn't matter where you live or how you get your healthcare, everybody's going to get a similar level of care in the future.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for joining me here today. And we'll be in the AIxCC space the rest of the weekend. Please come talk to us about AIxCC, about any of the projects that you've heard about today, or other ideas that you might have for improving healthcare for every American. Thank you so much.